I just want to talk to you about your composition, which is here. And before we start and listen to it, how did you come up with the idea of using two instruments? How did you pick your instruments?
I kind of like researched about the instrument first. Like I didn't start notating for an instrument without knowing its capabilities and how much I know about it. So I used the guitar and violin as my two main instruments.
Now, you are a guitarist,
Yeah.
so that makes it easier. What about the violin?
The violin, I actually had to research how they notate it. It was kind of easy because it is also another stringed instrument, but like there's limitations as I knew you couldn't use two notes at the same time because a violinist can't do that. There's some notes that are too fast for a violinist to play. There's some notes that are too low for a violin to actually go without tuning it down. I had to actually learn all that stuff before I started notating for it.
Okay. All right. So I'm just going to play a little bit. So this is from the topic instrument and its repertoire. So you picked acoustic guitar and a violin. Before I listen to it, what type of style did you choose?
It's supposed to be like a classical influenced piece. So it has like a lot of classical kind of expressive techniques as well. The guitarist, like it doesn't take from like traditional like like more modern rock and stuff like that. It's more like a settle down. Like you have to kind of pick the style first before you start writing. So if it's gonna be a rock influence, you have to have the drums and the keyboards and stuff like that. Here it's a classical, so I chose more contemporary choices.
Okay, all right. Was there anyone that influenced you at all? Did you listen to anything that you thought?
Yeah, there was actually a guitarist that influenced me. He's very classical. He's in Korea, but he's very classical, and I kind of wanted to write something like that.
Okay. All right. Okay, so that was your starting point, yes?
Yeah.
All right, let's just have a little listen to the first bit.
Yeah.
Okay, how did you come up with your idea?
Okay, so the first thing I did was actually lay out my structure. I didn't actually just start notating. I actually said how many bars I want to do for my intro, how many bars I want to do for my verses. So then from that, I kind of pictured, like, imagine how I wanted each section to sound.
Mm-hmm.
So then from that, I kind of developed each section in their own right. Like the intro had its rhythm, the verse had its own rhythm. I didn't do it too much the same, but I didn't do it too much different.
Yes.
Like you have to develop the structure first before you start writing
Okay.
the actual song.
All right, okay. And what about this melody part here? How did you come up with that?
I kind of like the ascending.
Mm-hmm.
I like how it ascended up and it kind of built up. Like I put also a lot of dynamic expressions.
Mm-hmm.
So it went from forte to mezzo forte.
Yes.
But then forte again. Like it went up and down. Like those little techniques here and there, it kind of builds momentum in the song.
All right.
And you have to think about that as well. You can't just have like a very basic. You have to, for that A, you have to go that extra mile.
Okay, all right. And then once you get going, where can I pick it up from? Say if I pick it up from here. Okay, then how did you start developing it? How did you start developing your ideas?
Well, there's a good technique in music called layering of sounds. It's very like you go into different parts and new instruments are introduced.
Mm-hmm.
So as you go into my verse, the bass drum is introduced. Then after my first chorus, then the drums start to be introduced.
Yep.
And here I built that as well. And then also leading up into the chorus, I had a pre-chorus. And in my pre-chorus, I had the violin doing a tremolo,
Mm-hmm.
which kind of like it was like tension building up right before the chorus.
Yes.
And also I had the crescendos adding up with that. I had the guitar only doing semi-brief chords to let the violin have its part as well.
Okay.
So there's equal share of parts as well. That's very important.
Yep. Okay. Let me pick it up from here. That's where it comes over. Now, how do you stop the piece not being too repetitive?
Okay, this is where variations come in. So differing from my first bit, if you notice that I actually have in the second verse, I have a few notes that are altered. In my second chorus,
When you say altered, what, in pitch or in rhythm?
yeah, so you can do anything really. Like I have some notes that go to like instead of going from A to C, I have it going A to F.
Yes.
Having sharps. I have a different type of rhythm in some parts.
Yep.
In my chorus, it's very evident. Like I put different techniques as well. Like I had a group of 3 notes in one part. Just you have to just keep adding things like that, so it doesn't it's not too repetitive.
Okay. And I noticed there you changed even the rhythm of the bass.
Yes.
Even in this part, it's different again.
Yeah, even the accompanying pieces as well, it's very important that you don't have them too repetitive. Because they are basic. They're supposed to be basic to let the main instrument shine. But they also are there to show that you have an understanding on how to like build interest in your piece.
Okay. Okay, so what happens in this section here?
This is actually a new instrument being introduced. So it's an electric guitar.
Yep.
So I have it there. It's to act as my bridge, and it's it kind of like shows that I can also write for another instrument. So it's very good to add like variation in your song.
Okay.
So you're not just adding the acoustic, you're also adding an electric, and it's also important that you keep adding the electric because you can't have it only for one part. Because like Mr. Vieira says, if you imagine an actual concert and the electric guitar is only for like 8 bars of your song, then why are you hiring the electric guitarist?
Yeah, that's right.
You have to also add it in other parts of the song. So if you hear my whole song, you'll hear my electric guitars actually added in for the rest of the song as well.
Okay, right. Just keep going. While we're listening to it, just notice too, you've got all the accents. So you've got some accents down in the drums. You've got the fortes, diminuendos, soft. Okay, what's happening in this section?
This
here?
is a call and response. So I have the core of the violin and the response of the electric guitar.
Okay.
Yep, it dies down the song a bit before it goes into the last chorus again. And it's kind of like showing my techniques in structure as well.
Yep. So I'll just play it again from here. So, and there's the answer. Call in the violin and answer in the electric guitar. Okay. All right. So that's a composition technique that you've used, and then everything else comes back in. Yeah.
You can use anything. You can really use I use the call and response, but canons are also very popular, where it's just like the 2 instruments are kind of repeating the same thing over and over again. So that's very popular as well.
Okay, good. And I noticed with the guitar part, you've notated all correctly.
Yes.
Okay. A common mistake that students do when they're scoring for a guitar, they'll write it as a piano score when actually you have to use the notes of the guitar.
Yeah, and it's also important if you do use something like a guitar, you have to notate that when it strums down, which is that little square thing at the top.
Okay.
When it strums up, it's that little triangle thing at the bottom.
Oh, right. Okay.
Like it's very important that you notate things like that as well.
Yep. So that one there's for strumming up. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Great. Okay. Well, is there anything you'd like to share with us about what were some of the challenges you had in doing this?
I think it's important that you develop one instrument at a time. So instead of like saying, I'm going to use this instrument, I'm going to use this instrument and this, try get one instrument first. Like for me, it was the guitar. You get that one instrument, you do a basic type of strip for it, see where you want it to do, what you want it to do in each section. Then you add another instrument. Then you add another instrument. You keep adding until you're happy with your first layout. Then you start adding techniques.
Okay.
Then you start developing it further. You don't just like start the whole intro with all the instruments and add it in, because then you're kind of like, it's easier in a way to first develop one instrument first.
Okay, great. Any advice for anyone, for students who are, undertaking their composition?
Take it easy. Don't force yourself to write. If you're not feeling it in that time, go take a break, do something else, and then come back to it. Because music's very hard to like force yourself to try and make something. It's kind of like art. If you don't feel it, just take a breather, then come back to it, and then you'll see that you have different ideas. And if you don't like something about your song, don't like take it all out like most people do. I had that mistake as well. Don't like take everything out. Try do something with it first, and then if you really don't like it, then you start again. Because starting again and again and again, it's just really tiring as well.
Yeah.
So try develop it. You might actually like if you just do a bit of differences.
Yeah, try and develop a little bit further. Okay, well, thanks a lot, Jo.
No worries.
And thanks for talking and sharing your knowledge with us.
No worries.
That was very helpful.